Hello, and welcome to this week's look at action and stunts on film and television. How are you? Thanks for joining me once again. You will know that we are covering Roadhouse this week, and from a comparison perspective more so. The original came out in 1989, and very recently on Amazon Prime, a new one came out. So originally it was Patrick Swazye in the role of Dalton, the doorman, bouncer, and in the new picture it is Jake Gyllenhaal. Now firstly, I put the feelers out on the socials last week, and the general consensus is that the Swayze picture is better. I mean, hands down, the amount of responses that I had suggested that the Patrick Swayze movie, regardless of the action, and I think that's important to focus on, but regardless of what had gone on, it's better. And it's better for a number of reasons. And the biggest reason that individuals are stating is that there is too much CGI in the new movie. CGI. Now, let's compare the two firstly, right? Because I have a thing about remaking movies. I don't object to it being done, but I only ever feel as though a movie needs to be remade if it needs to be remade. I'm kind of dead against movies just being made for the sake of being made. Roadhouse was a successful picture first time round. And often the way that things work is that if a movie didn't work first time around, then maybe it gets a bit of a reshuffle and a rewrite, and it gets recast, and then you get some new ideas, and then you create a reboot for a new audience. That makes a lot of sense. I can see that. There are movies that should never have been remade. Sleuth, I've said this before, is one of my favourite movies of all time. The original from 1972. It has Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. It's a Joseph Mankiewicz picture. It is beautifully done from start to finish. It's just perfect. I can watch it time and time and time and time again. I never tire of seeing that movie. Everybody has one. You'll have one too. Then, much later, 2005, I'm guessing at this stage, but it's around that sort of time. Michael Caine decides that Jude Law is the guy who would be perfectly cast in a, and it wasn't the word remake, reboot of Sleuth. So Michael Caine taking the Laurence Olivier role and Jude Law taking the Michael Caine role. By this time, many had made comparisons between Jude Law and Michael Caine throughout his career. Directed by Kenneth Branagh and script by Harold Pinter. And it just didn't work, primarily because you were so invested in the characters first time around that it was really difficult to accept these two, particularly Michael Caine, playing a different role in a movie that, you know, he was just so perfect for. So there are occasions when it doesn't work. I'm actually struggling to think of a movie that does work under these circumstances. But there are ideas of pictures that have come along and you go, okay, well, that's not so bad, and maybe over time we can create something and put the wheels on it and give it some pathos and some gravitas and some drive and determination and push that message home, if indeed the movie has a message at all. But so, you know, movies, I don't know, I have an issue with it. Then you take the project like Roadhouse. And as I say, Roadhouse was a very important movie. It arrived at the same sort of time that a lot of those big pictures were happening. 1989 was a very powerful year. You had Batman. You had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You had Lethal Weapon 2. You had License to Kill. They're all happening around that same year. Big pictures coming out. And Roadhouse was a picture that I know had been in development for quite some time. And Patrick Swazye certainly wasn't the first choice for this. But he was, by that time, really very bankable. You know, those type of pictures that he'd done before, and you know, it was all really coming together. So having him involved is very important, and I would like to think that stunt coordinator Charlie Pacerni had something to do with it, because Patrick, not only a very fine actor, was also a musician, but he had also been, and still was, of course, when you look at Dirty Dancing, but he was a dancer and a choreographer. Now, the movie is predominantly has fights, fist fights. What do you need to do during a fist on screen? I mean, what happens in a real brawl is a different kettle of fish, but on screen, light on your feet, remembering moves, it's choreography. And Swazye had done huge amounts of choreography over the years for varying projects, varying films, varying stage things, you name it, he'd done it. So the idea of absorbing choreography and then adding to it from a dance point of view, this is a simpler move here. If I go from there to there like this, that then leaves me open for the camera position here, and I can come and do the... And they're going, yeah, exactly. So that was very important too. And a number of things happened. The planets aligned, and the fight choreographer and the fight trainer, more so than a fight choreographer, but a fight trainer, who do we get? Well, we get... what about Benny the Jet Urquidez? Really? Is he available? Oh, yeah. Happy to do it. Now, I'm going to read from notes here because I want to get this right. Benny, as fight trainer, was, of course, a professional kickboxer. And also working in many of those martial arts that Patrick Swazye was comfortable in. But many will know him as working with Jackie Chan in Wheels on Meals and Dragons Forever. It has a magnificent fight. It's probably one of the greatest fights ever recorded on celluloid. If you remember, you know that name, you will know the fight that I'm referring to. But also he was the hitman in Grosse Point Blank, which, again, if you've never seen it, it's a belter and is a really serious piece of cinema. Funny, but really, really funny, but powerful at the same time. And Benny's one of the hitmen in that. And he's a remarkable fighter. His record, I think, stands at 49 fights and 37 were KO and only lost one. Now, that's not bad by any state of the imagination. They call him the Jet because he is speedy, fast, very, very fast on his feet, fast hands, fast reactions, fast everything. You name it, he's got it. And consequently, that type of fight that was going on was perfect for the audience at that time. And that's why Jackie was so keen on working with him, because he was a real character and the sort of individual that you wanted on these pictures. So when you've got a situation whereby you've got somebody like that training you in this art of fighting, well, that's great, but you want to have somebody to bounce off at the same time. And there's a role, Jimmy Reno, right? Who do they cast? They cast a guy called Marshall Teague, who holds black belts in both Korean Hapkido and Taekwondo. So they are both from martial arts backgrounds. They are both from those type of backgrounds, and they understand the types of movement and play that is regarded perfect for that. Now, Charlie Pacherny, of course, is very happy when the two of them, presumably from a rehearsal perspective, and let's see what we can do here, boys, and I need you to do this and need you to do that, and realising that the two of them are really very good at what they do. They're absorbing stuff quickly and they're remembering manoeuvres. Now, the added point to this is that in a number of interviews with both Marshall and Patrick, there are a number of occasions in their fights where the routine is not quite followed to the letter. There are adjustments made here and there, and mostly the situation is that somebody's wandered off a true line for a moment, but the two of them are so in the character that they have then just gone with that manoeuvre and have then tried to bring it back to the other point. There's a particular case in Point where they're fighting near the riverbed. You remember the lake sequence? They're fighting near that. Marshall picks up a real tree trunk and batters Patrick Swazye with it, causing him a great deal of discomfort, but gritted teeth and ploughed on through. And from an action perspective, and the director very good in this, thinking if it's good, keep it going, keep going with it. We'll clean it up in the editing suite. And if these two are happy, then we'll keep pushing through with that. Those edits can be done at a later stage. But the point of having everything done at that one point there in that final cut is very impressive. And it's very impressive on screen. And it continues to shine right the way through since 1989. Other elements of that include Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott, huge big fella, great actor, but also really fabulous at absorbing fights. And his reaction shots that are provided after he delivers some of these punches by some of the other stunt guys around are really very, very good indeed. That draws me on to this new project, because there are pictures around, and we've looked at a bunch of them already. We've seen those moments where you go, that punch never landed. You could see that from that camera angle. That punch was miles away and it never landed, not in a million years. Well, there are fights in the original Roadhouse where it's outside, Swayze's being beaten upon, and outside he arrives, he comes at the bar and he says, pour me a beer and I'll be back for it. And he goes outside to see how Patrick Swayze's getting on. And it turns out that he's not getting on terribly well. He's being beaten on by three fellas. Well, Sam then goes for the biggest guy. When in doubt, hit the big fella first. And he starts the fight. There's a couple of moments where there's a guy stood in the doorway and he does a couple of right or left jabs to his face. But the reaction shots of the guy receiving those blows is good. It's clearly, from the point where we're looking at it from the camera, those blows are being delivered. They're landing. Now, as I say, we've seen many occasions where the camera seems to be in the right place and yet those punches don't look like they're connecting at all. Well, this is the art here. In the new movie, a great collection of individuals as well, and let's not take anything away from anybody in the picture. Garrett Warren is the stunt coordinator, a man with many, many years of experience in film and television, knows a great deal about fight work as well. They have Eric Linden, who is in doubling Gyllenhaal for some of the fights, and the fight choreography is done by a guy called Steve Brown. And also, to make comparison, Swayze, during the fight sequences, was never doubled. When you see Swayze on set, in the clips, on film, in the fights, it's him. Now again, it's a different world now. I'm not disputing that. We know that there are so many different rules these days, there are so many different insurance options these days that you simply cannot allow, and the directors and the producers will simply not allow those actors to do everything that they want to do. That's a point you just have to accept. And Jake's in great shape, don't get me wrong, and he's very capable. You know, he's done a great deal of special training for this as well. But even he will go, I don't need to do this. I'm the actor. I don't need to do this. We can get the double to come in. And, of course, Eric, very competent in a number of martial arts and fighting. So he's very able to do the type of work that is required. The villain of the piece is Conor McGregor. Yes, that Conor McGregor. And, I don't know, you either love him or loathe him. There's no grey area between the two. He is a yes or no kind of person. And, the dialogue's not the greatest dialogue in the world. It's not going to win any Oscars for script writing. I think that's safe to say. And the fact that he's not an actor, I think, plays off on that as well, giving it maybe a sense of reality, it working in reverse. Often you would get a heavy role played by a guy who at least, is an actor or has done plenty of work. And I suspect that the reason that Conor McGregor was cast in the first place, I think this is one of his favourite movies, if I'm not mistaken, but also the idea that he was in a situation to say, I think that what would I do in this situation? What would Conor McGregor do in this situation? And to have him in this role, it's box office. UFC is huge. There are many, 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 many millions of people around the world who absolutely adore it. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan, but I can see where that fascination comes from. When you have a character in any line of work, in any business, who is huge and instantly recognizable. It's the David Beckham syndrome. It doesn't matter. You can be in Timbuktu or in the middle of the Sahara Desert somewhere. You wear a Manchester United top and somebody's going to go, David Beckham. That's they just know that. And he has that similar appeal. So I can see where it's going. And I can see why they've done it. Does it work? For me, I'm not entirely happy that it does. What I will say, and this was the point that was touched on before, about CGI. We've moved on considerably from the type of movies that were made back in the 80s to the type of movies we're making now. Does a reaction shot to a punch require CGI? Let me give you a brief breakdown of what was happening here. I'm going to use my hand as the demonstration model here. So this is my face. What was happening was that there was like a pugil. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. A pugil, and on the end of it is it's like like an area where the individual can punch and can hit. That area, it's green screen presumably, is then placed over the actor's face, and because he has dots on his face, so they know exactly where this is to be positioned to make it look correctly. So in the final cut, you are looking at somebody punching and actually landing a punch, where in point of fact, they haven't landed the punch for real. That punch has been landed and it has been added to the actor's face. Are you with me so far? Do I need to make any adjustments here or there? You at the back, are you happy? Super. Right. So that's the type of CGI that's being referred to. Reaction shots, of course, if they're being hit or they're being thrown and they're being ratcheted out of shot, okay, fine. That's going to be a wire gag, and you're going to have the stunt people in there. That big fight towards the end, Jake Gyllenhaal's character Dalton is being thrown about all over the place. There's wires here, there's wires there. I'm perfectly happy with that. I have no issue. Does this particular piece of CGI, this added piece of CGI where they are punching an item, an actual substance, physically punching it, the reaction shot of that is then placed over the actor's face for the reaction, for him to react accordingly, and it to go with him. I don't know. It's a very, very different way of doing it, because you're so used to seeing these punches be done from a cinematic perspective. The director's shooting over here, which means you've got to have everything in the right angle. No, it's got to be there. That's where the shot is. If you react accordingly, we'll get it here and it will look like we've landed the punch. Now they don't need to do that anymore. Those punches are being delivered. Maybe in the actual take itself, there are punches being missed, which is a possibility. And then they are allowed to then recreate that using the piece of equipment and then paste it on afterwards. Does it make it a better fight? No, the choreography of the fight and the ability of the performers should be in solid stone. Also, and this is just a point, and it's a question more than anything, should a fight be allowed, cinematically, should it be allowed to get away with doing, miss after miss after miss after miss for it to be replaced afterwards? Does it make that individual or the stunt performer or whoever is throwing these punches a better person for being, yes, that was a good punch, I'm right on the money here. From my point of view, I reckon that the audience are getting that every time. And then I do this one over here and he reacts over there and the camera's in a different position because we've got a couple running, or we're going to do it again from a different angle. I've always thought that was better, personally, when you look at it on screen. And of course, from now on, this version of Roadhouse could change everything. It could, if it gets to that point of critical mass where they go, this is the future, landing punches like this. Look what's happened. And I'm probably speaking from an old head on even older shoulders. But in the experience that I've seen in the past, it's difficult to get new stuff in there. So if this is the future and it works, fabulous. The feeling that I'm getting from those people who have commented on the posts when I've asked the question, which is better, is still the first movie. The first movie is still better as far as they're concerned. Is that because of the way it's delivered? Is it because of the way in which the movie is written and directed? I think there's a great deal more character work in the first picture. The second one seems to be just, let's get on with it. Let's not worry too much about characterization, and let's not worry too much about the general structure of this guy's life or anything else around him, but we'll put him into this situation and let him get on with it. And we'll cast this guy as the villain. Just to sort of tick a few boxes. Now, if it does really well and it's really, really successful, Amazon Prime, happy days, and I'm thrilled, and it will be great. But I don't know whether that first movie needed a reboot or not. That's always been the argument as far as I'm concerned. So that's my take on it. And I think it's important for you guys, obviously, to make your own mind up. I think it's very important. If you still haven't seen both, do it. It is available on Apple, if you have Apple. Many of you will have the original anyway, but Amazon Prime is still, if you have that, is still running the new Roadhouse picture. So go and check that out, please, if you will. Pop your comments down below if you have a different opinion. Always good to hear it. And next week, we're going to stay on the fight thing because, and it's probably my fault, but I was watching a whole bunch of reruns of John Wayne pictures, and there are some terrific fights, and I want to explore some of those, and we're going to have a look at some of the doubles in there as well, because they're very clearly there. Some of the tricks that they've used to get away with it, so that'll be a nice little look back to some of those great days of the West. So if you're a fan of that, don't forget next week. In the meantime, don't forget to check out the Pod Dojo Network. They're responsible for the podcast. And if there's anything else you need, comments down below. Subscribe if you don't already do so to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Many have, Go on, join them. What's the worst that could happen? And the button will be on the screen as well. So go and do that, and we will regroup next week for more of the same. Until then, It's bye for now.